everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cinema Heroes. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jay Stu.
And today we are talking about The Dark Knight Rises. I have a little bit of a damaged copy here, which is unfortunate.
Oh, no.
Released in 2012, directed by Christopher Nolan, written by Jonathan Nolan and Christopher Nolan, from a story by Christopher Nolan and David S. Goyer, and starring Christian Bale, Tom Hardy, Michael Caine, Gary Oldman, Anne Hathaway, Marion Cotillard, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and Morgan Freeman. This was the highly anticipated follow-up to The Dark Knight. And since The Dark Knight was our 100th episode, we thought 100 episodes later, let's do The Dark Knight Rises for episode
It's crazy
200.
to think that we've done 100 episodes since The Dark Knight.
I know.
That's wild.
It doesn't feel like it to me, but we have. It's crazy, I guess. But yeah. So this is part of the reason why I think we started doing franchises back to back, because it takes us so long to get to the next movie in a series.
And the thing is, we were waiting for John to be able to join us, but John is busy with school, and we don't want to stand in the way of that. So we just had to go ahead and do this episode without him.
We just got to go ahead and talk about The Dark Knight Rises and Bane.
Yeah.
So, Stu, before I ask you what your initial thought was on the movie, I will say that I went to go see Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol at the Universal City Walk IMAX in California, in Los Angeles. And they showed the prologue before the movie, and it was one of the most incredible things I'd ever seen. Even if I couldn't understand everything that Tom Hardy was saying. There's so when that prologue came out, it got a lot of, I won't say negative reaction, but a lot of people were like, I couldn't understand a word he was saying. And I felt like I could understand most of what he was saying, but there were a couple lines where I was like, don't know what he said. And so it was really interesting to me when the movie finally came out that it was way different. His dialogue was way more clear, and it was louder, and it was different takes, which I thought was really kind of crazy too. I don't know if it's still on YouTube. If it is, I'll link it in the show notes, but the way he performed it in the prologue, it was different than how it ended up in the first scene of the movie. And I remember, like, in particular, the one line that always stands out to me is when he says, "with no survivors," because in the original prologue, it was much more kind of subdued. You know, he was like, crashing this plane, and he was like, "with no survivors." And in the theatrical version, you know, "with no survivors."
With no survivors.
right. And so I found myself watching the movie for the first time being like, oh, I kind of like the other version better. But so I really wish I could see like the first cut of the film with the original Bane dialogue. And I mean, maybe I wouldn't have been able to understand any of it, but I'm just curious because some of the lines now, once the prologue ended, I had never heard anything else. So some of that dialogue is like iconic now. And I'd be curious if I wouldn't like the original version because I'm so used to the theatrical version now. But anyway, that blew my mind. And then when I actually did get to see the film for the first time, I didn't see it in IMAX opening night. I actually went to the regular theater, and they did a Trilogy screening. This is back when midnight showings were still pretty popular. And so they did Batman Begins, followed by The Dark Knight, and then The Dark Knight Rises was at midnight. And it was amazing. So my initial reaction was, I actually walked out of the theater going, was that better than The Dark Knight? Like, I was in love with this movie when it came out. So I'm very curious to hear what your initial thought was.
Okay. I didn't get to see that the
prologue,
the preview of the prologue. So I have the theatrical version of his dialogue is all that I know.
Sure.
But this came out when I was working at the theater, and I remember requesting this night off to attend the trilogy. And it was interesting because we watched the first two movies. By the way, that viewing of The Dark Knight was one of the greatest experiences, cinematic experiences of my life. The crowd was amazing. Every time Heath Ledger came on screen,
oh yeah, I'm sure
there was applause.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that was great. So when The Dark Knight Rises comes on, maybe about 5 or 6 minutes into it, like after the prologue, there is an issue with the projector. So
oh no.
I had to run up and try to fix it. Because I was off, but I was the closest to the projector, so I was like, well,
right. And you knew what to do and stuff.
Yeah, I knew what to do. So once we got that figured out and got back rolling, it took. I can't even remember exactly what was wrong. Like we had to unload it and re-upload it because it was digital.
Oh, interesting.
So,
yeah, that's true.
And it took a while. It was like maybe 45 minutes before the movie came back on.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
But the crowd was understanding.
I mean, I'd be willing to wait,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So did you start the movie back over from the beginning? Did you watch the prologue again?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, at least that was good. You didn't like miss anything, You just started over.
No. Yeah, we handed out free tickets, gave out like little sample popcorns or whatever, and everybody was cool. But yeah, this was the first viewing of this movie was perhaps the best viewing. Because I was amazed. I was like, this movie is phenomenal. I don't feel quite that way now. It's not quite as high, but
right.
This movie is still amazing, and I think it gets a lot of undeserved hate. But I still think this movie is awesome, and I actually shed some tears watching this movie the first time, and the first scene, I got a lump in my throat. I didn't cry. The second scene, a tear actually fell
right.
rolled down my cheek. And both scenes involved Michael Caine. Michael Caine in this movie, even though he's not in the movie a whole lot, Michael Caine in this movie is fantastic. This is one of the best Alfred performances of any Batman movie in this specific movie. But yeah, I love this movie. I do. I really do.
I'm 100% on the same page as you. I was head over heels in love with this movie when it first came out. After that first, like once I saw it again, I was like, okay, I don't think it's quite as good as The Dark Knight, but I still think it's amazing and I loved it. And I went and saw it in the IMAX a couple of times, and the IMAX scenes are glorious, even on the Blu-ray 4K, where you don't get the full image, but it's just it's the stockyard or the stock exchange scene right now, and it's just gorgeous. IMAX film just looks so good.
I love IMAX. I love IMAX so much.
But I think for me, once the excitement kind of wore off and like years kind of passed, and I was able to look at the film a little bit more objectively, I don't think it quite is as good as once I kind of took my excitement glasses off, I don't think it's quite as good as I had originally thought it was. I still love it, like you said. But objectively, I actually probably, if I were to rank the three movies, it would probably be in third place.
Same.
Yeah. I think there's some, like in the beginning, especially in the beginning, I think there's some clunky dialogue and stuff, and there's some plot holes and whatnot that I just kind of ignore because it's such a fun ride that I can look past certain things. But yeah, Bane is such a cool character. Tom Hardy, his performance is just beyond incredible. And like you said, Michael Caine's performance is so good. Everybody was doing a fantastic job in this movie.
Bane in this movie is so underrated. He's so I'm like, I know you said like he has some iconic lines, but just Bane as as a villain. This version of Bane and what he represents, and just how he opposes Batman from a philosophical standpoint. Like, he is just so good, and it bothers me to know it is a war crime how he does not get the recognition that he deserves as a villain.
I agree. And I know some people were upset that he basically ends up kind of being, in the end, kind of being a henchman to Talia. You know, they were like, I think people really wanted him to be the main villain. And then when it turns out he was just kind of working, you know, doing Tanya's work or whatever, I think people were a little bothered by that. It doesn't bother me at all, because he's still like the main bad guy through 90% of the movie.
Right.
And he's amazing. So it doesn't bother me at all.
Doesn't bother me either.
I love it. And I'm a little sick, so I don't know how well it'll go, but I've learned to do somewhat of a Bane impression, and you do it I think it sounds the best when you do it into a glass. So I'm going to do it real quick, and we'll see how it goes.
Please do.
You think darkness is your ally? You merely adopted the dark. Maybe not so great, but fun to do.
It.
Fun to do it.
Molded by it.
At parties. Yeah, exactly. Molded by it.
By the time I saw the light, it was nothing to me but blinding.
We could just do an hour worth of Bane quotes, and that would be real fun for everybody to listen to. Yes. But
I still want to do an audio series. That would be so fun. We got to do that. Let us know in the reviews and the comments and stuff if you want us to do an audio series of superheroes and stuff, because I want to do it.
That'd be a lot of fun. It'd be fun to play different characters and stuff. Do some voices. So Tom Hardy's Bane performance is so iconic, in my opinion, that now, like, versions of Bane that I've seen in other pop culture stuff kind of parodies his voice. Like, I'm thinking specifically of the Harley Quinn animated show. The Bane on that, he talks like this, and, like, you know, it's not like, it's kind of like a sillier version, but that's how he talks on that show. So it's kind of become, you know, the Bane voice, basically, which I think is kind of great.
And a lot now, like, his Bane often wears a jacket now or a coat now because of this movie. And sometimes in some iterations, his mask kind of resembles this movie. It still has the luchador look, but it's a little more tactical, like this particular mask. So this version definitely influenced other versions.
Yes, I definitely agree. How do you feel about, so Bane's original mask is very luchador-esque, and it's not really like this at all. How did you feel about that change? How did you feel about the live action? Because we've had a live action Bane before, technically, and his mask was probably a little bit more similar to the comics. But yeah, that Bane was terrible. Not really the actor's fault by any means. It was just the way the character was written. But this Bane is much more comic accurate. However, he doesn't really look comic accurate, I would say. But that being said, personally, I like how I just asked you a question and now I'm answering it for you.
That's fine. That's okay.
I love the mask. When I first saw it, I was like, that is amazing. Yes,
I agree. It is an awesome mask. It implies luchador without actually being a luchador mask, and I like that. I love it. Yeah. And he gave Bane a reason to wear the mask other than just to hide his identity. He's not worried. He's not necessarily worried about his identity. He gave him an actual reason to have that on, and I like that.
And I remember reading Tom Hardy was talking about how it was going to be a challenge because he would only have his eyes, basically, because the rest of his face is covered up. And I still think he knocked it out of the park.
Knocked it out of the park.
So, I mean, his performance, he's so menacing he put on a lot of muscle for this movie. He was already a pretty big guy. He had put on some muscle for the movie Bronson, but he put on even more for this movie. And he looks incredible as Bane. It's just, he commands the room, like when he comes into the stock exchange, when he's on the football field in his coat and everything, like he's just, he's perfect. He's perfect.
Yeah. I love how whenever he walks in a room, he's scanning the room.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's checking things out. Like he's not necessarily like making any immediate plans, because when he walks into a room, he already knows what he's gonna do. But he's just like, he's observant. He's very observant, and I like that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Another new addition to this series. There's a couple of new additions to the series, but obviously the next big one would be Anne Hathaway as Selena Kyle / Catwoman. Yeah. How do you feel about Anne Hathaway?
I like her. I don't love her.
Right.
Out of the cinematic three, she ranks last.
Out of Batman, Bane, and Catwoman, is that what you're saying?
Out of I guess four, because Eartha Kitt was in the movie, right? Not the TV series, right?
Eartha Kitt was on the TV show. It was Julie Newmar, I believe.
Julie Newmar was in the movie.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
All right. So out of the cinematic four of them, I guess Julie Newmar is like kind of in her
kind of
own.
A separate, yeah,
because you
that
can't
movie
really
is kind of. We haven't even talked about that movie yet, but that movie is kind of like almost an Elseworlds thing,
Yeah. I like it, but it's it's its own thing.
It's of its time and stuff. Yeah.
Yes. But out of Michelle Pfeiffer, Anne Hathaway, and
Zoe
Kravitz, Anne Hathaway would be last.
Yeah, probably same for me.
I like Anne Hathaway. In my opinion, I know there are a few people that disagree, but in my opinion, she's a fantastic actress, and I think she does very well in this role. I'm not quite sold on how she's written as a character. I love her interactions with Christian Bale.
Mm-hmm.
I love Selena and Bruce anytime I see them, whoever's playing them.
Right.
It's the working with Bane part that I don't quite like.
Bye.
Like, yeah, from a philosophical standpoint, I get it. From this whole like eat the rich type standpoint, I understand why she would be aligned with that, but I don't know. It's something about it that just rubs me the wrong way, that this cat burglar is aligning with a terrorist. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, because her line, right, when she springs the trap and we see that she's just led him straight to Bane.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, "You've made a big mistake," and she just said, "Isn't her line just a girl's got to eat or something?" So it's just we just got the impression that he just paid her, and she was okay with it basically. Until I think she starts to see him getting beat up, because when we see her in the airport in the next scene and John Blake stops her, he's like, "Is he dead?" And she's like, "I don't know." Like, she looks like, I like the way she played that scene, because you can tell there's a little bit of guilt behind it.
She was conflicted about it. Yeah.
But I agree with you. I think I like Anne Hathaway. I like her as Catwoman. I love like when I first saw how her goggles flip back and those were the cat ears, I was like, oh, that's kind of genius.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, but you're right. It's just there's something a little off about the role, I think. And I know I did read, and I don't, this could maybe not be true, but I think I did read that Christopher Nolan originally didn't want Catwoman to be in the movie, and it was Jonathan Nolan that kind of convinced him to include her. And I almost feel like you can feel that, not that she feels shoehorned in or anything, but just maybe that she just doesn't have the love for the character wasn't there like it was for some of the other characters, perhaps.
She doesn't feel useless. It's just that she doesn't have a whole lot of meat to her. She doesn't have a whole lot of weight.
Right.
And she feels a little two-dimensional, but I think Anne Hathaway's acting abilities kind of offset that. She tries to make this two-dimensional character three-dimensional with her performance. Because like you said, that scene at the airport when she was conflicted and when she was watching Batman get beat up, like it Anne Hathaway did the absolute best that she could possibly do with what she was given. I just think that the character, again, it just doesn't sit right with me that she would align with a terrorist.
Yeah.
That's kind of, that's too far.
Right.
You know, like I know Catwoman is, you know, blurs the line between good and bad, but I don't think that she would align with a terrorist. I just don't.
Would you have liked it more if they had, you know how she's got Juno Temples in this film and she's kind of like her roommate or friend or whatever? Would you have liked it if like Bane had kidnapped her Juno Temple or something and like kind of used her as leverage to get Catwoman to do what he wanted to do? That type
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that would have, yeah. Rather than just being paid for it. Yeah, I agree. I think that would have been maybe a little bit stronger. John Blake, Joseph Gordon-Levitt plays Officer John Blake. I remember one of the complaints about the film was people had a hard time swallowing the idea that John Blake could just look at Bruce Wayne and immediately know he was Batman. I've never had a problem with that scene. I actually really like that monologue from Joseph Gordon-Levitt. So it's never really bothered me. I guess you could say maybe there's probably other people out there who would be able to piece it together just as easily, I suppose. But I think, you know, he flat out says like he had a very similar situation to Bruce Wayne. He just wasn't his parents weren't wealthy, you know? And so
I understand why people would complain about that from like a movie standpoint. It doesn't bother me at all. And I think people are ignoring the power of intuition.
Right.
There have been, I can't think of any specific examples right now, but there have been some examples of a character knowing that, you know, like Clark Kent is Superman. Like I know for a fact that there have been instances where a character has figured it out on their own with little effort, and it's just because the character is smart. And
kind of like Amy Adams in Man of Steel.
Yeah, Amy Adams in Man of Steel. But like with John Blake, so jumping ahead a little bit, this is Christopher Nolan's version of Robin.
Right.
And I'd like to think that, at least it feels this way to me, that this version of Robin takes a lot of inspiration from Tim Drake, John Blake, you know. But even in characteristics, Batman is the world's greatest detective. And in DC lore, Tim Drake is officially the world's second greatest detective. So if John Blake is inspired by Tim Drake, then obviously he would be a very good detective. He would have that intuition to figure it out. Like you said, they have similar backgrounds. So it makes sense that particular character would be able to figure that out. I probably wouldn't buy it if it were somebody else, but because it's John Blake, it makes sense. He is always thinking outside the box. He doesn't really follow the rules. Like the law is too rigid for him. Gordon, he compliments him on the way he thinks and promotes him to detective, like right on the spot. So in the grand scheme, it makes sense.
Yeah. 100%. I agree with you. And you explaining it and talking, it's funny. I'd never even thought about Tim Drake, John Blake, but I mean, it makes sense. And explaining it that way makes me even more okay with it. Because I mean, we do see how he is very smart. And he's piecing stuff together that other people are not piecing together throughout the film.
Yeah, that his superiors aren't even piecing together.
Right. So it definitely makes sense to me, and I'm A-okay with it. And I really like the character of John Blake, and we all knew he was getting, kind of the Robin character. And so at the end of the movie, when that line comes out, she's like, "You should use your first name. I like that name, Robin." And he just kind of looks at it. I remember the first time I saw it in the movie, I think everybody cheered. Like my theater loved it on opening night. And now I've seen people, I think what you said in the beginning, this movie kind of gets undeserved criticism or undeserved hate. And that's one of the things that I've seen people kind of say is stupid, is the whole Robin. But I love it. I don't
think it's stupid. Cheesy a little bit.
Maybe
stupid,
a little bit, but I like it. Yeah.
I remember watching it in the theater, and like the kids in the theater, like when she said Robin, like the kids like went crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just fun. It is maybe it's a little cheesy, but it's fun.
It's a fun
like
moment. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That, and then, obviously we'll get to it, but that whole ending sequence is just so good.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I want to talk about the Bat. So this movie has 2 introductions to the Bat. And I've seen that as a complaint too. It's not a complaint to me because that thing is so awesome that it deserves 2 introductions. And the first introduction it still gives me chills. The way it's that whole chase scene, that whole scene from the stock exchange, like robbery, to the Bat being shown, like that whole sequence. I love watching that.
But him getting Dark chased by all the police.
And he makes that hard left turn, and the wheels on the Bat pod spin, and he goes down the alley. And then Matthew Modine, with how just arrogant he is, he's like a rat in a trap, gentlemen. And then
I think you got the wrong animal there, sir.
The sound is so good.
Yeah,
when the lights go on, it's just like, gosh, it's such a good scene. And then the second introduction is this isn't a car. When Catwoman is hops in with him. That's kind of the second introduction of the Bat. But they're just both are so good. And then it's an IMAX.
People really complained about that?
Well, I think I remember hearing some complain about it back in 2012 that the Bat had 2 introductions, and it was kind of,
how sad is that person?
I don't know.
They must be miserable to complain about that.
It must be real fun at parties, right? Yeah. But no, I love it. And I was gonna say there's an IMAX shot. It might be right after that, or after he drops Catwoman off and does the so that's what that feels like. That whole thing.
Yeah.
He goes back to the Bat cave, and seeing the Bat come through that water in that IMAX shot is just
the way it comes in, like it stops on a dime, like it's like whoosh. It's so sick. This is my favorite version of the Batwing, hands down. Michael Keaton second, and then a very, very extremely close third is Batfleck's. Because his is sick. I love the Bat in the negative space. That's awesome.
Right.
But Michael Keaton's is just so it's so cool. But this right here, I could totally believe that this thing exists.
Yeah. So going back to the prologue, when I saw the prologue in front of Mission Impossible, I had not seen any footage of the movie yet at all, but I knew they were going to show the prologue in front of Mission Impossible. That was half the reason I bought a ticket to Mission Impossible, even though I really didn't want to see the movie. And the IMAX scenes in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol were amazing too. But the prologue ends, and then it has like a little short, like kind of teaser reel of footage, and it's all IMAX footage. And one of the scenes is it's a pan. It's like a camera pan where it starts on like the camouflage tumbler and pans, and you see the Bat following it down the street. I remember seeing that in the theater, and I was like, oh my God. Like it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And that was the first time I'd ever seen the Bat. And it blew my mind. And I agree. I think this is a super cool version of the Batwing.
Oh, I love it. I love like how it kind of gets loud and quiet, like when it first shows up, it's loud and very intimidating. But as it's like flying over the city, like there's a shot that is so beautiful of the bat flying over the city after they beat up those thugs and Catwoman hops in. Oh my God, that shot of the bat is so awesome. It's just like surveilling the city. Like, oh my God, it's and it's so unconventional. Like it is really its own thing. Like it's not a plane. It's like halfway in between a plane and a helicopter, but it's inverted. Like, like it's crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting that, you know, it's called the Bat because it's almost kind of bug-like with the
a little bit.
But I love the design of it. I think it looks so cool when he's flying it like that in the third act when he's flying it down the streets of Gotham and stuff. It just looks so good. And there's behind the scenes footage of like they had attached it to like a car or some sort of truck on an arm, and then they just digitally erased all that. But I mean, it's amazing that they had like an actual practical bat that they drove down the street and stuff.
Yeah, I want to know how did he film like the scenes where it's like really up high? How did he
or something? I don't know.
Yeah, like how did he make it look? Because I know like Christopher Nolan uses very, very little CGI. How did he do that without? I can't see him not using CGI for that.
Right. Yeah. He probably did. Maybe he just got like helicopter shots of the city, and then they had to for those flying sequences, they just had to do CGI for the.
But it looks so real, like that. Like I said, that shot of them like over the city. Oh my God, that is one of my favorite shots in the movie. This movie kind of it links back to Batman Begins, and it is revealed that Bane is the new leader of the League of Shadows.
Right.
And he is, he's the successor of Ra's al Ghul. And we get to see Christopher Nolan's version of the Lazarus Pit. And I love it. I love how he uses it as an allegory for resurrection rather than actual resurrection.
Right.
It's so smart, but when you think about it, because it's Christopher Nolan, it's like, of course it would be a prison. Of course it would, it would be an allegory. And I love how it's done. Like you are free to go if you can get out.
Right.
The top is wide open, and I love this this version of the Lazarus Pit. What I'm not too fond of, and it's kind of a nitpick, but kind of not, the doctor. He had to explain to Bruce after he had tried numerous times to get out of the Lazarus Pit. He had to explain to Bruce that you have to do it without the rope.
Right.
I would have liked if Bruce had figured that out on his own.
Yeah.
That would have been much more powerful.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's not a deal breaker for me, but I can understand why you would want that. I do think that it would have been more powerful for Bruce to figure that out on his own. Speaking of that doctor, you saw Oppenheimer, right? Yeah, you saw Oppenheimer. I know you did. Albert Einstein in that movie. I'm watching Oppenheimer. I'm going, where have I seen this guy before? I've seen the guy that plays Albert Einstein. It's the doctor from this movie.
Well, he wasn't the actual doc. The
guy that like said, kind of he's the one that he's like the old man who he's like, I guess you could say his mentor for the prison scenes. Yeah. Well, we got to talk about how Bruce gets into that prison. So there's the halfway, the midpoint of the movie is the big fight that everybody is expecting because Bane is the bad guy. The big fight between Bane and Batman, and did not disappoint.
It did not disappoint at all.
And seeing him lift Batman up and then break his back over his knee was just perfect.
Man. Oh, man. This is easily my favorite fight scene in the entire trilogy.
Oh, yeah.
100%. I've always had a problem with the way the fight scenes were choreographed and edited in these movies. Even The Dark Knight, which is nearly perfect. That's one of the things I'm not fond of. This movie is where the fight choreography, to me, makes the most sense. The way Batman moves. Batman is this version of Batman fights he's very direct. Like, I need to put you down quickly.
Right.
And not kill you. And, not necessarily give you a concussion. Whereas Ben Affleck will absolutely give you several concussions.
Brain damage.
Yeah, he will absolutely give you severe brain damage, send you into cardiac arrest. He does not.
Right. Just kill you, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to talk about that because Zack Snyder has pissed a lot of people off. I read about that. Yeah. But when is Zack Snyder not pissing people off?
Right, sure.
But this movie is where the fight choreography makes sense because this version of Batman is old. Well, older. He's not old, but he's older. He hasn't fought crime in 8 years.
He's been out of the game, yeah. And his body, he's let his body kind of, he hasn't been keeping up with his, he's deteriorated. Yes, thank you. That's the right word. So he's let his body kind of deteriorate a little bit. And so he's not, and Alfred even says that to him. He's like, you've never gone up against somebody this strong and you've been out of the game for 8 years. And he's like, well, I'll just fart. Yeah, great. I'll just fight harder.
I'll just fart harder.
I'll just fart harder, Alfred. I'll just fight harder, Alfred. He's like, that's what I do. And he's like, Alfred's like, I don't know about that, man. Yeah. And
Alfred's right. Yeah. He's absolutely right. There's no other way to say it. Batman gets his handed to him. But again, it's one of my favorite fight scenes. I love the way Bane fights, and we get the iconic back break. But what makes the scene is Bane's dialogue.
Yes.
That's the best part of the fight scene is Bane talking and taunting Batman. It's so menacing. And it's so good. It's like it's almost Shakespearean.
Yeah. Those are some of my favorite lines in the movie. The one that I did earlier, you think darkness is your ally. But I also like
really
I'm not going to remember it exactly, but when he catches the punch and he's, he says something about something has made you weak or something, he's basically saying like, you're not as good as you used to be. He was underwhelmed is what he's saying. Right.
Yeah. He was like, I thought I expected more from this fight,
and Batman is throwing a lot of his tricks at him. Like he throws those smoke bombs and Bane just stands there, doesn't even flinch. And he's like, theatricality and deception. Powerful tools.
Powerful tools to the uninitiated. But we are initiated. Oh, man. So good.
And then, of course, your precious armory. We will need it. Gratefully accepted. So
we will need it. I was wondering what would break for us. Your spirit or your body.
So then, while Bruce is in the prison, Bane takes over Gotham.
Yes.
It holds the entire city hostage. I remember seeing, I tried to avoid the trailer. I think I tried to avoid mainly just the last trailer for this film. I think I watched.
Even remember the last trailer.
The last trailer was actually a pretty good trailer, but it It didn't have a whole lot of dialogue. I think it was like mostly just music and kind of cut scenes, like quick cuts. But it showed a bit. And I remember they showed it right before, like we watched Batman Begins. They probably did it for you too. Batman Begins, The Dark Knight. And then they showed the trailer. And I was like, why would you do that? And then we went into the movie. But, or maybe they showed it before Batman. I don't know. Batman Begins. But either way, I remember seeing the bridges blow up. You know, you see like that wide shot of the city and there's those two bridges that you see the explosives go off and then the bridges fall. And it's just kind of jaw dropping. And of course that was in IMAX too. So.
Yeah, and that's another thing. I love that Christopher Nolan kind of blends, or Jonathan Nolan rather, both of them. They kind of blend these two Batman stories, or like three really, because you got Nightfall, you got Dark Knight Returns, and you got No Man's Land, all in one movie, and it you know, it's not a perfect fit, but I think it's the best it could have possibly been done with those three stories. Right. And marrying those three stories together, like having them tethered together, makes sense. He goes, you know, it starts out as, you know, the Dark Knight Returns with old Batman. He gets beat up with Bane. That kind of transitions into Nightfall, which sets up the second half of the movie, which is No Man's Land. And I just it's genius to me to put those three stories together.
Nice. We haven't talked about Marion Cotillard, but we can talk about her because I think we should just talk about the third act of the film.
Yes.
Well,
I agree.
Bruce's escape from the prison, the music in that scene when he finally does decide to make the climb without the rope and make the jump without the rope. Hans Zimmer nailed it.
Absolutely.
It's my favorite track on the score. It's called Why Do We Fall, and it's so good, and I still listen to it all the time.
Since we're talking about the score, I have a bit of a hot take. I listen to this score more than The Dark Knight.
Really?
Yes. I think what makes the Dark Knight score, obviously the main Batman motif, the brr, brr, like that.
Right.
And then the weird Joker theme.
The violin, like
winding up. Yeah.
Right.
That's all. That's awesome. I love how epic and bombastic this score is. The Dark Knight Rises has a phenomenal score that no one talks about, and it pisses me off. Like, this score is so good. It is just as good as The Dark Knight. I just think that people, you know, say that that score is so amazing because the movie is amazing, and I'm not saying that it isn't, because it is, but this score is just as good as The Dark Knight.
I would agree with you. I tend to probably listen to not every track, but I probably tend to listen to the Dark Knight score more often. But there are only like 3 or 4 tracks that I kind of listen to over and over and over again. And with this score, it's kind of the same way with this score, but there's probably a couple more that I listen to over and over and over again. It's probably more like 5 or 6 or something, you know? And one of them being the final, you know, the finale, basically, which is kind of a long track, but it's just
so good.
Yeah. I remember reading when this movie came out, because this movie, you know, the first 2 movies had Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard as composers. And this movie only has Hans Zimmer. And I read that James Newton Howard went and saw Inception, which was scored just by Hans Zimmer, and was like, you guys don't need me. He was like, you guys are fine. He was basically like, you guys clearly have a good working relationship, and I'm good. You know?
That's funny.
Yeah. So I agree. I think this score is really kind of in your face, but it really works.
It works
for the film.
Yeah.
and it is a lot of fun to listen to. And I don't know if you if you remembered what I said in the Dune episode, the last episode, but when you watch the movie this time with the chanting, were you listening for
I could not hear it.
Awesome.
I was like, Justin.
You will forever hear it now, because that's all I hear when I hear it.
Yep.
But that's how I feel when I listen to it. I'm like, this is awesome.
We started talking about something, and then
I was gonna bring up the third act, and we kind of have to talk about, like, so Marion Cotillard plays Miranda Tate, which is an alias we learned by the end of the film, but she was trying to do a clean energy project with Bruce Wayne, and he had invested in it, and they'd actually built it, but then the doctor from the beginning of the film realized that, I don't know if it was I don't think it was their specific clean energy thing, but whatever they were using to power the clean energy device, or whatever you want to call it, could be turned into a nuclear weapon. And as soon as Bruce Wayne found that out, he shut it down and was like, I can't let that happen. And of course, that's exactly what happens. Bane gets a hold of the core, or whatever you want to call it, and gets the doctor to turn it into a nuclear weapon. And then it's another one of those movie things that I'm okay with, but it's kind of a little is like, he's like, who else knows how to do this? And he's like, only me. And I'm like, well, people, I'm sure you wrote like research and stuff. I'm sure people could probably figure it out.
Yeah, like somebody knows.
Right. But he's like, only me. So Bane kills him. So now there's nobody who can like deactivate it, basically, or anything like that. So there's Bane.
That was a great scene, by the way. That whole the football stadium scene was amazing.
I agree. It's always kind of weird seeing like sports arenas in Gotham City. It's just not what I think. Like, when you think of Gotham, you don't really think about them having a football team, but it is it's supposed to be a major U.S. city, so it would make sense that they would have a big, football stadium. Yeah. And I also love the little Robin Easter egg when the people are holding up the signs for the Rogues, and it's got the Robin R on the side.
Yeah.
But yeah, that whole football stadium scene where the mayor gets blown up, and then it's actually on my TV right now. And then that one guy who's an actual football player, I believe, or was
Hines Ward.
Yeah. He's running down the field, and the field's just blowing up behind him. It's good. It's amazing. I just think it's awesome.
Yeah, he played for the Steelers, and they had filmed this movie in Pittsburgh,
right? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember when they were shooting this movie, they basically, because the first two were shot in Chicago, and I think it was Emma Thompson. No, what's her name? Emma Nolan, Christopher Nolan's wife. Is her name Emma Nolan?
Emma Thompson.
Emma Thompson. That's what I thought. But then I was thinking, isn't that the woman from?
Yeah, there are two of them. There are two Emma Thompsons.
I guess there are two Emma Thompsons. Anyway, she was like, we shot every inch of Chicago. She was like, we couldn't go back to Chicago because we'd shot everything. So it was interesting seeing kind of a different locations, because they shot in a different city in Pittsburgh.
And it also made Gotham feel bigger.
Yeah, it did. You're right.
Yeah. But back to Miranda Tate.
So Bane has kept the city hostage with this threat of setting off a nuclear device, and also said that like somebody, like a random citizen, has the detonator or something. I can't remember. He says something like that.
An ordinary citizen. That's what he said.
An ordinary citizen, which is interesting. It's kind of similar to the fairy stuff with the Joker at the end of The Dark Knight. But anyway, Batman eventually Bruce Wayne gets out of the pit, comes back to Gotham. How do you feel about the fight scene between Bane and Batman, and with the whole city fighting in the daytime?
Before that, when Batman returns, no pun intended, I love it. I absolutely love it.
When he first comes out of the fog, basically, or whatever it is, on the ice.
The villains have taken over the city. Like Scarecrow has like his own court, which I love that
scene, by the way. Seeing Cillian Murphy in that scene again, that was so good.
He's like, death or exile. He's like, I'm not going on that ice. So he says, death by exile. He pulled the Bugs Bunny on him. man. But yes, when they're walking out on the ice and you hear Batman's voice, light it up. Oh my God. Oh, it's so awesome. And you see him step out of the fog like, yes, Batman has returned. But yeah, what was your question? I got too excited.
Batman fighting Bane in the daytime. Had it, was that like an
I'm
issue
okay
for
with
you?
that. Nope.
Yep.
I'm okay with it. Batman in the daytime.
I think that scene, again, because it's IMAX partly, but I just think that scene looks so good.
It does. It's you know what it is? It's the color palette, it's the contrast, because it's winter and everything is white and Batman is black, so he sticks out like a sore thumb in every like frame, and it looks awesome, and you can see the suit in its full glory. Like, Christopher Nolan took full advantage of this being the last movie. He pulled out all the stops, and that's something that is not appreciated about this movie. We don't get to see Batman actually driving the Batmobile in this movie, but we do see multiple Batmobiles being used by Bane. We get the Bat. We get the Bat Pod. We get Catwoman. We get Catwoman on the Bat Pod. There's another great shot when she I guess she's being pursued, and then she like turns around. Oh my God, that is one of the best shots in the movie. It's fantastic. Yeah, Christopher Nolan. I used to say that this was his worst movie. After talking about it, I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure about that, because I have seen every Christopher Nolan movie. I think I've seen every single one. It is at the bottom of his filmography.
But that's mainly just because his filmography is so good.
Yeah. He Christopher Nolan has yet to make a bad movie.
Right.
Yeah, he has yet to make a bad movie. But yeah, he does not get enough recognition, and this movie does not get enough appreciation for celebrating Batman. Because people want to talk about, the plot holes, like why were all the cops down in the city? I was like, well,
right.
It clearly said, I want every cop down. I want every cop down. Like that's not really a plot hole. Like it said it black and white, plain as day. And then what you said about, John Blake figuring out that Batman was Bruce Wayne was Batman. I'm like, it makes sense in the context of the story. So I just think people wanted to nitpick this movie because that's what people do. It's the third movie, and third movies have a reputation for being the worst of whatever trilogy they are part of. It came after the Dark Knight, which was immediately being regarded as one of the greatest movies of all time, regardless of genre. So it had a lot to live up to.
Yeah, exactly. It had a very high bar. Yeah,
it had a very high bar. And when it didn't meet that bar, everybody's talking about, oh, this movie sucks. I'm like, what movie did you watch? Like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Like, bro, like you can't, like, we live in Atlanta. You can't get Ruth's Chris all the time. Sometimes you gotta go to Outback. But Outback has really good steaks.
Right. And if you are somebody who demands Ruth's Chris from every movie that, or every steak you eat,
you're going to be severely dissatisfied.
Right. Exactly. You're just going to be a grumpy, angry person.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I think, we both can admit this is not a perfect movie, but I think it's an amazing end to the trilogy, especially the final scenes. Which I think we're about to talk about. It's I said I ranked it number 3 out of the trilogy, which is probably still true, but I still think each one of them is really solid.
Yeah. My favorite part of the scene, well, it's really the whole scene, if I'm being honest. that whole, I like to call it the war scene, where all the cops, he's freed all the cops, and they're on the front lines, and like they charging towards Bane and his henchmen. That's
Matthew
awesome.
Modine gets gunned down. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't see it, but
right.
Like 1 minute he's fighting, we hear gunshots. Next thing you
just see him on the ground. I read that was because they originally had him getting like run over by a tumbler or something, and it ended up being like, and I don't know if this is true, but it ended up being like too violent for a PG-13, so they had to kind of rework it. Because it does seem weirdly edited. That moment.
Yeah.
And it does, and so I think I kind of buy it, because I feel like there was more to that death scene and they had to cut it out.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Another part that I really, really like is when Bane's mask gets damaged.
Yeah.
And he rages out. That is like Christopher Nolan's version of like Venom.
Right. Yeah,
it was so satisfying to see Bane go berserk, even if it was only for like 6 seconds.
Right.
But it was so satisfying. And he punched Batman and missed and hit the pillar, and the pillar. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I love it was moment. So good.
And then right after that, that's where we learn the Miranda Tate is actually Talia al Ghul, Ross's daughter. And we find out that the kind of the story we had heard about Bane, about being born in a prison, which is accurate for Bane in the comics, was actually about Talia. She was the one that had been born there and was the one that had climbed out of the prison and stuff like that.
And he
was like her protector.
Yeah.
Which I really liked that reveal when I saw it in the theater.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of online rumor that she was going to be Talia al Ghul.
I mean, for me, I'm like, who else could she be?
Right.
Like I knew her name was Miranda Tate, but I'm like, I'm not stupid.
Right.
So it wasn't like people coming up with rumors and they just happen to be right. This is just people. This is just people being
making
smart.
Kind of a logical,
exactly. It makes complete sense. So
so it wasn't surprising when that reveal kind of came out.
Not at all.
But I like it, and I like the idea that she's Talia al Ghul and she's trying to avenge her father, but also kind of take on her father's legacy and stuff. And so I think it works. It works well. How do you feel about her death scene? Because I've seen some people hate on that too.
It's not good.
Yeah, it's a little goofy. She's such a good actress.
Yeah,
but the way she's just like,
she's.
I do wish kind of Nolan had been like, let's try that again.
They say dying is easy, not for her.
Okay, let's talk about the final moments of the movie.
Okay. Yeah, so earlier in the movie, Michael Caine was like, I'm not going to watch you kill yourself. I'm out. Peace.
Right.
And that scene made me tear up because it is one of the best scenes, in my opinion, in any Christopher Nolan, let alone this movie.
Right.
The emotion was so thick in that scene. You really believed that he watched this boy grow up into this vengeful. I wouldn't say vengeful because this version of Batman, I mean, he is vengeful, but it's more about like doing the right thing. But he watched him grow up into this vigilante, and for a lot of the trilogy, he's proud of him, and he stands by him, and he supports him, and he helps him. Obviously, that's because that's what Alfred does. But it was heartbreaking to see Bruce kind of pleading for Alfred's help, and Alfred is like, "No, I can't watch this. I made a promise to your mother and father to ensure that I would take care of you and protect you and nothing happens to you. I can't be present for to destroy yourself, because you're grown. You're gonna do what you're gonna do regardless of me. I'm an old man. I can't do nothing. But I can't be present for that. And it was heartbreaking to watch that. And then after Batman makes his we didn't even talk about that. But when after Batman makes his incredible sacrifice and flies the nuke over the bay. Oh, that was so beautiful. It was so beautiful. He's like watching the sun and like, I could gush about this third act for the rest of the night. Yeah. But after Batman makes his sacrifice and they're, at the private grave site in the back of Wayne Manor. And Alfred is bawling, like ugly crying. And he's looking at the graves of Thomas and Martha Wayne. He's like, I failed you. I was done. When he said that, I was done. The Denzel Washington tear came down. And I was like, oh. And then like the camera pulls out, Alfred walks away, and you see Bruce's
gravestone.
Gravestone. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Yep. Continuing on that scene, we see there's a dedication ceremony of the Batman statue in City Hall, I assume. Yeah. And then, there's they're giving away things from Bruce Wayne's will. Wayne Manor becomes the new home for, it becomes the boys' home or orphan children or something like that.
Yeah, it becomes the new orphanage. And I love that. I think every Batman story should end with Wayne Manor becoming an orphanage.
Yeah, I agree. And so John Blake picks up, I guess I don't know, he's told that I guess Bruce Wayne left him something. And so he goes to pick it up, and it's like a duffel bag with, some
spelunking gear.
And and GPS and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then so we cut back and forth from a couple different scenes. We follow John Blake, but we're also with Alfred, and we've set up in the beginning of the movie that when Bruce Wayne was missing for those 7 years while he was like training with the League of Shadows and stuff, Alfred would go on vacation occasionally and hope to see him at this little cafe that he would go to. And they wouldn't say anything to each other, but they would just nod to each other. And he said, I would know you were okay. And, obviously never happened. And so then at the end of this movie, we see Alfred, and he's going to this cafe. He thinks Bruce is dead. That's it's the thing. Yeah. So he wasn't even really looking for Bruce this time. He just was going to the cafe to have his little drink.
Like he normally does.
And he looks over, and the first time I saw the movie, I didn't think they were going to actually show Bruce, because you could just tell off of Michael Caine's performance that he sees Bruce Wayne. Because he's like, he looks around and then he sees him, and he's like, it's better than that, obviously, because Michael Caine's a better actor than me. But
I didn't think they were going to show him either. I didn't think that either.
I thought that's how the movie was going to end, and then it cuts to Bruce, and he's there with Selena. Selena's wearing the pearls, and he nods to Alfred, and Alfred. Again, masterclass in acting with Michael Caine right there. But he nods back, and it's just beautiful. I remember I listened to a podcast with Kevin Smith right after this movie came out, and Kevin Smith was talking about the scene, and he started crying. He just like it's that good.
Yeah, it is that good. Yeah, it is that good. Yeah. Not a word was said. It's perfectly set up, and you've got two of the greatest actors of all time doing what they do.
Yep.
Raising the glass, just and I agree. If the movie had ended just on Alfred, I would have loved that as well.
Yeah, it would have been fine. Yeah, exactly.
But Christopher Nolan gave us, like I said, he pulled out all the stops on this movie.
Yep. And then they could have ended the movie right there, but they decided to end it with John Blake discovering the Batcave and walking in, and then all of a sudden the floor to the Bat. I guess the Batcave. I mean, he's in the Batcave, but whatever the floor is, that kind of where the Bat computer was and everything, starts to lift, and he's like, "Whoa!" And then it covers the camera. Cut to black. Roll credits. Just a mess.
Oh man, everything you said, awesome. We didn't talk about the Batcave before we get into ratings. I love this Batcave. I go back and forth between this one and BVS. I know the Michael Keaton Batcave has a special place in people's hearts, but this Batcave is so cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
I love it because it's not like, I mean, it's a cave, but it's more like a cavern or a catacomb. Like it's so open and wide.
Yeah.
And like the water is just constantly flowing. And I love the explanation that they give for it in Batman Begins, how it was used as like a pit stop for the Underground Railroad during the Civil War. I thought that was amazing. But in BVS, it's the complete opposite. It's so tight and claustrophobic, and like everything is built into the stalactites, and it's just I love it. They're perfect. They're perfect for each movie. So it goes back and forth. I really love both Batcaves. But the thing that's amazing about this scene is that it sums up the trilogy thematically. Batman says, or Bruce says in Batman Begins, when he's on the plane with Alfred on his way back to Gotham City, he says, "I need to become something more. I need to become a symbol, something incorruptible." That is exactly what Batman is, a symbol that is incorruptible. He is not one singular person. Batman is an entity, and this movie wraps that up so well, and thematically it's perfect.
I 100% agree with you. They say that I can't, I'm not going to get the quote 100% right, but basically like your movie or your story or whatever can be good, but if your ending is amazing, then everybody will love it. And obviously that's not the case. People don't love this movie, but for me, he nailed the ending so perfectly that I do love this film. Not just because of the ending, but it wraps up the trilogy so perfectly, like you said, and it's just it gives you such feelings that I love it.
Yes. I've gushed about this movie for an hour and 16 minutes now. So I could go on and on, but let's go on the ratings.
Sure. Before we started talking about it, because it's one of those things where I hadn't watched the movie in a while, and I didn't actually get to watch the whole thing before we recorded this. It's been a very busy week for me, but so I was, and over the years, I think I'd kind of bumped The Dark Knight Rises down amongst my Nolan films, like you said. But talking about it with you, I'm reminded about how much good there is in this movie. And I wasn't originally going to go this high, but I'm going to give it 4.5.
Same.
That's
4.5.
Yeah.
I was waiting on it. 4.5 bat signals. Dark Knight bat signals out of 5. The only things that are keeping it from being a 4 out of 5 is, we didn't talk about this, but the length a little bit. It's a little long.
Right. Yeah.
Catwoman is a little bit underdeveloped.
And
there was something else. What did I say? I can't remember what I said. I said so much.
Yeah, same here. I remember I said in the beginning some of the dialogue's a little clunky. There's some, I don't know, but yeah, it's just, I mean, there's some negatives you can say about it for sure. Like we said, it's not a perfect movie, but it's just,
it's better than what people give it credit for.
I agree. Yes, I agree. And like you said, I think it gets some undeserved hate.
Yeah.
I think people are. I think it's kind of like how I was feeling. It's I haven't watched it in a while, and I just had started to think it's not as good as I remember.
Mm-hmm.
But it is. It is as good as I remember.
Yeah.
And so I think people just need to watch it again, give it another chance, and I think they would find themselves actually enjoying it.
Yeah, I agree.
Same thing actually happened when I saw it the first time, when I saw the trilogy. A friend of mine came with me, and he's not really a superhero movie guy, and he had seen Batman Begins, but probably only once when it first came out. And so he had kind of done that in his brain, had kind of thought, I don't really like Batman Begins. It's just an okay movie. And I remember when Batman Begins ended, he turned to me and he goes, that was actually really good. And I was like, I know, dude. So I think people just, they just need to rewatch it. And maybe there's maybe those people can't get over some of those things that they don't like about it, but like we see, with John Blake, knowing who Bruce Wayne was, stuff like that. Maybe people just can't get over those speed bumps. But for me, I'm okay with it, so
yeah,
everything, pretty much almost everything in this movie works for me.
Yep.
Well, we'd love to know what you think about The Dark Knight Rises. You can always let us know at cinemaheroes.com. You can also tweet at us or comment on our Instagram. Both handles are at cinemaheroes. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment down below. Give a thumbs up for our 200th episode, and reach out to us however you want to. We'd love to hear from you. I think that about wraps it up for this episode. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jay Stu.
As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing.